Hello, this is Doug Schuler. I'm here to talk to you about the pattern sphere and post-growth human-computer interaction. Uh, Before we get into it, I want to say I prepared this for the post-growth and HCI workshop, but it also should work for other people who are interested in pattern languages and working for the common good. If you're interested in assessing the patterns for the post-growth HCI pattern language, and you don't need introduction to what a pattern language is, et cetera, you can just skip ahead to about slide 15 or so. And also, if you're interested in using the pattern sphere, PS, in any way, and you don't need the introduction, you can skip ahead also. So the slides before that talk about a little bit about the motivation for this, and a pretty brief introduction to patterns and pattern languages, and a little bit about our thoughts on where we want to go next. Just the briefest of backgrounds. We're really at a place where we're bumbling and careening our way towards multiple catastrophes. Mostly these are of our own making, unfortunately, and computing seems to be making them harder for us to address. But on the other hand, HCI and HCI professionals can play useful roles in alleviating these problems. Developing a relevant and effective post-growth HCI is a very wicked undertaking. And there's a formal definition of that somewhere. But we believe that a pattern language project can help us think and act a little bit more coherently and collaboratively on addressing these issues. So what do we know about addressing wicked problems? I'm planning to just race through these, but you can pause this if you're looking at it later. A lot of this stuff came from a book called New Strategies for Wicked Problems, and the focus on wicked problems is now becoming very popular because it acknowledges the difficulty and the complexity and the interrelationships and the unknowns of wicked problems. So what will be required? More effectiveness, accountability, and democracy, new problem-solving methodologies, processes, etc., that can integrate science and other disciplines and values that are possessed by all the different stakeholder groups that are necessary to address wicked problems. We need to integrate these research activities. We also have come to realize, maybe we knew this already, but the people in power won't solve these problems by themselves. And so that doesn't mean they can't be part of the solution. Sadly, in many cases, some cases, they are part of the problem. We need more people, and we need all sorts of different types of coordination to make sure that we're sort of heading in the right direction. So some of the implications of this are really we have to be developing a new consciousness, acknowledging the prevalence of these wicked problems and realizing that we may have some stake in not only understanding them, but in trying to do something about them. Polycentricity, there's no one center for all these issues. And so there's many, many, many different centers to this. We need to actually institutionalize some of our approaches when we start coming up with better ones, so that so we don't just keep reinventing the wheel, and also re-institutionalization, because some of these institutions are creating over and over the same sorts of problems. Also, the sad part is that resistance to sort of all of what we do is to be expected, and it might not be so easily dealt with. So will we be smart enough soon enough? So here's the meliorist principle that I believe in. Things could get better. They might get worse. They might get better. but without human intervention, they're unlikely to get any better. This is a statement that Christopher Alexander made, and he's the person who's basically responsible for this idea of patterns and pattern languages that are now coming into prominence. He says, this is a fundamental view of the world. It says that when you build a thing, you cannot merely build that thing in isolation, but it must also repair the world around it and within it, so that the larger world at that one place becomes more coherent and more whole, and the thing that you make takes its place in the web of nature as you make it. So this is the book that sort of started the whole thing. 1977, A Pattern Language, Christopher Alexander, several authors. Its focus was the design and construction of human habitations, and it was sort of geared to bottom-up action. And so a pattern, the main part of a pattern language is something that appears over and over. It's something that we've noticed from reality, and it represents sort of a recurrent problem that we have, and also kind of a vision of how to intervene with that, and work towards a sort of a better future. And patterns are intended to be generative. They're supposed to help come up with something, then that something can come up with something, and so on. It's important to note that they're not precise instructions. You use them in different ways depending on the circumstances under which you're using them. I mentioned that before, that patterns sort of already exist, but we have noticed certain patterns and have formalized them and described them so that other people can build on them, hopefully. And patterns promote action as well as thought. So here's a couple of patterns from Alexander's book, sort of at random. He has 253 different patterns. This one is number 133, staircase as stage. I show it because I kind of like it. Where I grew up, we didn't have any staircases. Anyway, identifiable neighborhood is another one. And these are things that they say you need to have if you are going to have a convivial environment. This is like more of a personal one, and this is more of a broader neighborhood level. A pattern language is a collection of patterns, and usually they're put in an order or some sort of a structure, and together they sort of form a coherent, holistic set that can be used together. You might use one pattern and not another. You might use two at the same time, but they're intended to be used together, even though a pattern can be useful on its own. So in the original book, Alexander stated that a pattern language could be developed in any domain. And that's sort of what got people thinking about using the pattern. Hey, I can use pattern languages. And so a pattern language was about architecture and human settlements. The book that I put together is about engagement, social engagement using information and communication. This project we're talking about now, post-growth human-computer information, interaction, is about the role of HCI in achieving a post-growth world. So here's just a bunch of examples of pattern languages that people have come up with recently. My book is here, Liberating Voices, but also you notice that a lot of, this is the pattern language for the master plan of the University of Oregon campus. And this was a pattern language for the iPhone design. And you notice a lot of these patterns are computing related, and it became very popular after some of the original kind of computer pioneers talked to Christopher Alexander. It's a different story, but Alexander wasn't as keen as patterns for computing as he was for patterns for sort of social amelioration. Here's just some examples of ones that came up within the last few years, and they're all devoted to sort of the interplay of technology or the built environment to human situations. There's Nice is working on a refugee pattern language. There's a patterned justice pattern language for Pittsburgh. A book that just came out is trying to sort of make suburbia more sustainable, etc. And that's by the guy that came up with the term permaculture, the idea of permaculture. This living neighborhood in Detroit is sort of one person's adventure trying to make his own dwelling be part of the kind of living fabric in Detroit. And then this people just got a grant for neighborhood revitalization in Arkansas, in the America's fastest shrinking city. Just I thought an interesting way to phrase something. Pattern languages, why use them? The post-growth for HCI is a pretty good candidate for use for this because it's not necessarily coordinated. It's not a sort of mature discipline yet. Anyway, so patterns help capture key ideas, and they can help coordinate and bring together a lot of different efforts. And that's one of the things that I'm hoping for with this project. They can provide a lingua franca. They can provide an idea that isn't solely the province of one discipline. Patterns are designed to be used for a while, and then another one might be used, and then another one. They sort of don't posit an end, but they talk about the way to get there. They're repeatable, but you don't have to repeat them in the same way. They adapt to different circumstances. They're useful for coordination in many ways. They can be useful for description, explanation, reflection, design. There's lots of different ways. We haven't really explored all of them, but they can help groups evolve answers, approaches together. They don't have an implied central command, and they work well with other approaches. They're not trying to say, oh, everything you've done was wrong before. They can be integrated in. So the pattern sphere is some application software that we're working on, putting it on the web. And it's ultimately intends to be a collaborative environment for working with patterns, all the way from people that are designing patterns and developing patterns, talking about patterns, sharing patterns, but also developing plans and projects based on patterns. And we've identified a lot of what we find are gaps and little challenges that have to be done to sort of build a better, bigger pattern language community. And one is that all these pattern languages out there might be 500 or more, they don't necessarily talk to one another. Each one uses a slightly different framework, so they're hard to integrate into one. So we're working on this project slowly but surely. I'll show a couple of screens for it before. And basically what this video is trying to do is exhort you, plead with you, beg to enter your thoughts in relation to the set of pattern candidates that we've put together so far. You'll see that in a second. So what we're trying to do with this pattern sphere is actually work with groups as we go along to figure out what groups need and what's sort of the best way to implement it. And we're basically just getting started, but we think we've made some pretty reasonable progress. We're putting the sort of the groundwork together, the foundation, the database, and then starting to do tools for working with those. So here's where you want to start. You can go here to this labs.publicsphereproject.org/PS, and then click to the bottom of the page on Post-Growth HCI, or you can go right to the Post-Growth HCI, which is down here. It'll take you to the screen that you see up above. And so if you do have an account, and I've started accounts for about 30 people that came to this workshop, you can use that. And if not, you need to contact me because our registration system is not quite working yet. The login system works. Anyway, write me if there's any issues at all that you have about this. That's how to get there. If you've logged in and you're a member of the Post-Growth HCI project, and I will make you one if you're not, you can go through here, and here this shows 8 patterns from our book, and each one you mark as, you can mark it neutral, you can mark it as a good candidate, or you can mark it as an excellent candidate. And so you can see I've been through this before, and so I marked the commons as an excellent candidate as it applies to the post-growth for HCI community, and I put the good life as a good candidate, teaching to transgress as a good candidate, and then you sort of assess these. So we're trying to put together the sort of the group thoughts on this, and so this, and then also you can add optional commentary if you would like. Then this is another sort of group of patterns. These are the member proposals, and these are ones, there's also an opportunity for users to add their own pattern candidate on the fly, and it will be added to the set of patterns that people will assess. And so we have other ones: social environmental linkages, salvage computing, local knowledge, etc. So these are all for assessing these candidates. Okay, so the goals are, we'd like to consider pattern and pattern languages approaches for this post-growth HCI as we move forward and as we become more coherent as a community. We want to make progress on the language. Also, I'm hoping, and I'm hoping that other people are hoping, that this will inform the development of the pattern sphere application. And so that we also hope that people can use that, and it will be useful in going further. The questions I would have for you is, how do you think the pattern language approach could help support the community? What pattern candidates resonated with you? What would you like to see next? And can you envision using multiple patterns? These are just some of the questions that come up. And there's actually a place in the assessment where you can just add your thoughts. And so the more people that add their thoughts, the more the more likely they are to be integrated, and the more likely they are to sort of have a full range of useful thoughts. So thank you very much. Don't forget to write.